A couple of years ago, I came across a trailer for the first season of Final Space, a Netflix original animated sci-fi comedy drama, which I thought looked pretty cool. If you've watched any of my videos, you'll know how much of a sci-fi fan I am, and this looked like it could be my cup of tea. With Season 3 debuting soon, I thought I'd take this opportunity to say, Final Space is one of the most frustrating viewing experiences I have ever had in my entire life. This show has so much awesome stuff in it, and elements which seem like they were almost tailor-made to appeal specifically to my tastes. A bright, pulpy outer space sci-fi adventure? Check. Lovecraftian cosmic horror influences? Check. Epic space battles, psionic power fights, and a rip-roaring adventure across a galaxy teeming with alien life, space anomalies, and spectacular worlds? Check, check, and check. And yet, all of that stuff is slotted between some of the most irritating characters and obvious cringeworthy jokes which do nothing but waste time. I don't think I have ever simultaneously loved and hated a show this much. And the more I watched, wanting all the pieces to fall into place and really get into this show, the more I came to see it as emblematic of an attitude, particularly in Western media and art, which is still holding back an entire medium from its full potential. Now, if you like Final Space, all the power to you, and I mean that. This video is not intended to shit on anyone's opinions or tell you you're dumb for liking something. If this is your jam, that's awesome. But if you are curious, I invite you to listen to what this video has to say, and perhaps provide some food for thought. For those unfamiliar, Final Space follows Gary Goodspeed, a pretty inept astronaut serving a prison sentence who gets swept up in a galactic adventure when he encounters an alien creature, which he names Mooncake, and who has the power to wipe out entire planets. This same life form is pursued by numerous factions seeking a way to open a dimensional gateway and reach a mysterious realm known as Final Space. Now, there are many things this show does well. For one thing, the animation is really good overall. It's incredibly colourful and energetic, conveying a lot of personality even when characters are idle. I've said before how some other animated shows have a bad habit of leaving certain characters completely motionless when they're not speaking, making scenes feel dull and not fully utilising the medium of animation to the show's advantage. But in Final Space, this is not the case. Final Space also has some really fun and interesting characters with immediately iconic designs and strong performances from all of the voice cast, and these characters inhabit a fun and expansive sci-fi universe. I've mentioned earlier that Final Space pulls right from classic pulp adventure comics and serials. It isn't remotely trying to be realistic or grounded, but instead fully embracing the sillier side of science fiction world building. The end result is a setting populated by a myriad of creative alien designs and heaps of eye candy. However, its greatest strength is its command of visual storytelling and tone, which manage to convey moments of genuine emotion and pathos. At its best, Final Space is truly moving and heartfelt. The large scale of the setting and plot makes every twist, turn, and action set piece feel properly epic. Not just epic action-wise, but also epic character arcs, with numerous scenes of dark contemplation and tragedy and heroism. But all of these great elements are unfortunately stuck between what doesn't work in this show. The biggest problem with Final Space is Gary Goodspeed, the protagonist. He is irritating, out of place, not funny, not charming, and actually a little creepy as well. Like, he meets Quinn for a few hours and then for the next 5 years has a delusional one-sided relationship where he thinks she's his girlfriend, and when she sees the many hundreds if not thousands of messages he's sent to her with no reply over the years, this is apparently supposed to be endearing. He isn't the only painfully unfunny character, but he is the main culprit. He's the primary source of the show's jokes, hardly any of which land, and mostly just distract from the actually compelling concepts in each episode. In one episode, the characters travel into the mind of a cosmic deity. It's such an awesome idea, but Gary...
I am not okay with this winter wonderland of cosmic cotton candy! Explain to me what just happened. Ah, I think my eyes are bleeding! My eyes! Blood! Blood!
God, shut up!
Gary is also the source of a truly annoying quirk in which he's obsessed with cookies, and that's it. He talks a lot about wanting cookies, is happy when he has cookies, and sad when he doesn't have cookies. It was only slightly amusing the first time and is literally the same joke over and over and over again. The biggest problem with Final Space's humour is that it doesn't serve the plot. The pace and plot progression of each episode comes to a sudden halt for Gary to fuck around for 2 minutes. This was similar to the issues which plagued the Orville Season 1, and guess what? Season 2 of that show got way better when they stopped doing so many stupid jokes. Good examples of sci-fi comedy like Galaxy Quest or Red Dwarf weave their humour into the plots and character arcs. They aren't just making jokes for the sake of making jokes. These jokes pull double duty, planting and paying off crucial plot points and helping us get to know these characters. But in Final Space, the humour feels entirely divorced from everything else which is going on. Season 2 was a slight improvement, very slight, but instead of dialing back the humour, the jokes simply spread out to other characters. All of the problems with the comedy remain, it's just not quite as potent as in Season 1. Gary Goodspeed, though, is still just as annoying. The opening voiceover even states an awareness of this.
I'm Gary. A lot of people on Reddit think I'm annoying. Well, I guess they have a point.
But lampshading the problem doesn't solve the problem. Ultimately, Final Space would just be so much better if it wasn't a comedy. I'm not saying it shouldn't have any humour at all, but if it decided to play it straight as a science fiction action-adventure series first and foremost, the show would play to its strengths way more. So why isn't it? I will say this is speculative on my part concerning the creative intentions of the makers of this show, but I feel like the reason Final Space was a comedy was because it felt like it needed to be. Because it's an animated show. There is a ridiculous attitude in much of Western media which seems to think animation is a medium only intended for children. Real movies, real TV shows which are meant to convey serious drama have to be live action. This line of thinking has always been baffling to me. Animation is not a genre, it's a medium, just one of many art forms which can be used to tell a story. Not only does this restrict the potential of animation, it also unfairly dismisses the genuinely brilliant animated works which are intended for children. So often animated movies are brushed off as just kids stuff, as if by virtue of being targeted toward a younger audience, they're somehow less worthy. Honestly, most animated movies of the past decade which I've seen have been better written, directed, performed, composed, shot and crafted than the dozens of soulless blockbusters Hollywood studios churn out year after year. Hell, Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse displays more visual imagination in single shots than most MCU movies do in their entire 2-hour runtimes. But the attitude of kids stuff continues to persist, and not only does this attitude sell short the outstanding storytelling and visual craft which goes into these movies, it also has the effect of limiting what adult animation can be as well. Have you ever noticed that every major adult animated show in the West has to be a comedy? A comedy with strong language, excessive violence, crude humor, or gratuitous nudity? None of these things offend me, mind you. In fact, I enjoy all of these shows I'm showing clips from right now, but why do they all have to be this way? My theory is because the creators of these shows feel a pressure to state as clearly as possible to the audience, look, I know it's a cartoon, but don't worry, it's not kid stuff, this is a show for adults. But more often than not, these elements come across as so self-conscious and unnecessary, they inadvertently make the shows look more juvenile, like an edgy teenager trying to prove to their parents that they're not a kid anymore. One of the reasons my favourite short from the Netflix show Love, Death and Robots was Zima Blue was because it didn't feel the need to shove as much adult material in your face as possible to justify its existence. It simply told a great story using a medium perfectly suited to convey its ideas, with a fraction of the resources needed to do the same in live action. I think all of these factors are why shows like Avatar The Last Airbender, Legend of Korra, Samurai Jack, and the DC animated shows have such strong adult followings. Because as adults, we are starved for great animated shows targeted at us. The medium seems to be stuck in two extremes. Obviously, if there's violence, sex, and strong language, that's an adult animation. But if those things aren't present, it's automatically a kids show. So where are the PG-13 level animated shows and movies? That broad appeal of being enjoyable for adults and teenagers, but not always suitable for young children. Right now, traditionally geeky genres like sci-fi, fantasy, and superheroes are bigger than they've ever been before. Animation provides as large a canvas as possible to tell those kinds of stories. Creating spaceships, aliens, and superpowers requires a lot of resources for a live-action film, but for animation, those things take just as much effort to create something which looks like our everyday world. In a previous video of mine, someone asked me which sci-fi properties I think would benefit from an animated entry. My answer is literally all of them. When the only limit to what's possible in a story is your own imagination, there isn't a single sci-fi universe which wouldn't benefit from an animated entry. But more than anything, I'm interested in something new. Major studios these days seem to want to stick to established franchises rather than gamble on something original, and the result is a lot of no doubt new, amazing stories being left to gather dust. Perhaps if we were a little less snobbish with regards to certain art forms, we'd see more of those new stories really get their time in the spotlight. Thank you for watching. If you like these videos, subscribe and hit the bell icon to stay up to date on my new uploads. If you want to help the channel grow, join my patrons or my YouTube members, where you can see videos early as well as some other exclusive content. Speaking of which, I'd like to quickly thank all of my patrons and members who are now appearing on screen. Have a good one, and as always, live long and prosper.